My name is Anat. I'm head of academic partnerships at Ment.io. I've been teaching in universities, it feels like forever, but it's been a little over a decade, and it's always been interesting and fun and challenging. And I think you'd all agree that this point in time is making the challenging ever more felt and emphasized. And I think today is a very good example of that, when we jumped from a smaller room to a larger room, from this to that. So I hope you're bearing with us. So yes, this point in time is truly challenging for teaching. It's not only about the materials that we teach and the level of engagement that we'd like to create. It is, how do we do it in such circumstances? And today we are very, very privileged to have a wonderful speaker, whom I'll turn the floor to in a minute. I do want to mention that we have a chat and Q&A open on Zoom that you are very welcome to use during the webinar. We have members of the Ment.io team that will be happy to answer your questions during the webinar. Largely, the setting of the webinar will be as follows. I am greeting you here and just giving a few words of introduction to Ment.io and this webinar. Then I'll turn the floor to Dr. Tim McMahon, whom I'll introduce in a second. He will be presenting extremely important information about how to engage our students in an asynchronous manner. So giving us some really important tips on how to do this in an optimal manner. After that, I'll add some remarks on new things on Ment.io and how the platform can enhance the engagement experience with the students. And then we'll turn to question and answers that we'll refer to from the Q&A and chat questions that you will be posting during the webinar. Lastly, we'll end with a small experiment or a live work with Ment.io, with the platform, so you'll have a feel of what it looks like, and be able to continue the conversation that will start today on the webinar on the Ment.io platform. So without further ado, I really want to thank Dr. Tim McMahon from the Heider College of Business at the Creighton University. Vast experience in the business world, leading businesses, an accomplished business leader, and an acclaimed instructor of online teaching for over a decade. After having been a CMO for a Fortune 100 company, went back to higher education, completed MA and a PhD from Gonzaga University. And I have seen some of his work, and truly I'm excited and looking forward to hearing the wisdom that he will be sharing with us. Currently, he's also completing a book for Routledge titled Fostering Employee Buy-in Through Effective Leadership Communication. And I'm really excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for your patience and for agreeing to be on this webinar. And now I'll turn the host privileges to Tim, and you will have the floor and just share your insights with us. Thank you.
Okay, I guess you can hear me, and we are actually on board here. As soon as I find my presentation, we'll be ready to go, won't we?
You're supposed to be able to share your video as well, Tim, if you just...
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't let me turn on the video before, so maybe it will now. Huh? Think that'll happen?
Yay!
Hey, we got a video. It's me. That looks like me. Looks just like me. Okay, so where am I looking for my presentation? We got a lot of stuff up there, don't we? Oh gosh, here we go. Why don't we just do this? Okay, whoops, sorry about that. Why am I not finding the presentation? It should be up on the screen. Okay, there it is. Now we're talking. Okay, does that look like something we should know? Yeah, does it?
You can't see the shared screen just yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I know what that's about. Let me just get here and we'll do this.
I guess everyone.
Okay,
can
now
see
we're
that.
in. I think we're
Yeah,
okay now.
perfect.
Okay, now we're good. Okay, sorry. I guess it's kind of, I guess my best excuse was I was caught in virtual traffic. That's what we always say, right? The traffic was really bad on the way to the event. I'm really pleased to be here, but I'm also pleased to be using Ment.io. Just to kind of give you some background here real quickly is that we are attending a webinar called Using Asynchronous Discussion to Continuously Engage Your Students. But really what we're doing is we're kind of stepping back a couple of frames and trying to understand what it is we're doing. I come from Creighton University. It's a top third university in the United States, about 8,393 students, 10 colleges, mostly medical, dental, professional schools. We are basically an AACSB accredited. It's a business organization accredited. We're celebrating 100 years this year. We just moved into this brand new building. It's not even complete. We have about 1,000 undergrads and about 400 graduate students. And we believe integrity before profits. How about that for a business college? Okay. So I really am very excited to share with you something I've been doing for quite some time. This is what we're here for, right? I picked this up from Inside Higher Ed and Hanover Research, and it says the challenges of adopting a viral classroom. 75% is training faculty less familiar with digital delivery. Huh. I guess we're all kind of a little bit, especially with COVID kind of rushing us into the process, right? If you weren't there for a while, then it's a whole new thing. I assure you, I am not a technically savvy guy, as I've just proven, but I'm able to understand how to use technology in the classroom. I'll try to share that with you today. So don't be afraid of that 75%. I think that's something important to remember. So here we have, some years ago, I was engaged by a national jet charter company. They charter jets all over the country and so forth, the world for that matter, to train their flight crews in all matters not related to technical operations of the airplane, which is, you should be happy to know that. Such things as how to work better together and how to challenge each other and how to make clients feel valuable and the investment they just made, which is sizable, was a good one and actually carried value. What I discovered is that, like most people, they really needed to learn how to learn. And that's really what we are now doing as instructors and teachers, is we're learning how to learn. They were pilots, let's face it. They get cargo from point A to point B, enough said. They don't have a whole lot of other people skills. Now some do, but most don't. Yet, that's not really an optimal way to practice this business when you're face-to-face with a customer in a very serious situation, a costly situation. So they have to help to set themselves apart by training their people. And I approached it as saying, let's learn how to learn. It really seemed to work out best. I opened with this slide. And this slide they could all relate to because it's aviation slide, and that makes sense. And I said, here's what you really have to remember, is at this point in your life, you do not want to be asking this question. What am I forgetting? And that's kind of like what I feel like sometimes when I was going into the classroom last spring and last fall and changing everything over. What am I forgetting? So we're going to try to back up a frame or two and really understand not so much about the technology. The Ment.io people have done a great job of creating a wonderful platform. What I'm going to try to do is talk a little bit about pedagogy and the way people learn. So this is something that Howard Gardner came up with years ago, and the 7 learning kinds of styles that we have, you know, and I never really believed this that much until my youngest son, he's now 34, he's a kinesthetic learner. And I found out that because he played basketball and he wasn't really great in school. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, he hated school. But he loved basketball and he learned. He knew where everybody was on the court. He had knowledge that nobody else had. This is knowledge. This is what we're really looking for. So I started reading more about Gardner and understanding that there's lots of different ways that people learn, and we have to kind of meet them where they come from, right? That's what we're attempting to do. We are best served to step back and understand that we all have different learning styles. Howard Gardner wrote, intellectual competence is about developing a set of skills of problem solving. Identify the problem, create the solution. But he also said it's about finding or creating problems, thereby laying the groundwork for the acquisition of new knowledge. That's kind of the crux of the way I approach online learning. You must really be confused by now, but I'm going to clear it up for you real shortly. We learn in all different ways I've just described. This is a very important statement. If you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't try to teach them. Instead, give them a tool at which they will lead themselves to new ways of thinking. That was Buckminster Fuller, you know, the geodesic dome and all this wonderful stuff, just a great creative mind. And that particular statement struck me a number of years ago that said, that's really the way we learn. The pilots, you know, that they learned how to fly. Sure, they read manuals and they did similar, but they really, by sitting behind the yoke and flying the thing and getting a feel for how it works. And that's the way we learn also, and our students learn. So doing is learning, and that's what I kind of approach this, and that's kind of where we go with this. So I want you today to hear about and talk about a tool that will lead your students and you to new ways of thinking. The tool is one I've been using for 15 years when I was first introduced to online learning, and in particular, asynchronous learning. So that's really at the heart of what we're talking about today. After a long, successful career, I returned to college at the age of 50, and I was with younger people, but I was in a virtual environment. It was online. And I was able to really kind of get to know them because there was not a lot of pressure. The fear was reduced. It wasn't face-to-face. I didn't have to be on 24/7. I had to be on when I was connecting with them. And it gave me a private kind of a means by which I could construct my thoughts, and everybody had this. So it reduced the fear of failure, face failure. I do a lot of work in China. I teach there, and they have a fear. The Asians, I found out everybody does, has a fear of losing face. That's our number one, and college students do too. I've watched college students do so much better when they get outside of the peer and into another environment entirely because they don't fear that face loss. So what I'm trying to get at here today is, while this webinar is using asynchronous discussions to continuously engage your students, what we're really talking about here is a whole different question. Can we build a high-performance learning organization? And some of you are from education, high school, college. Some of you are for industry, and I've worked in industry and trying to train and teach people in industry as well. High-performance learning organizations is where your future is if you are in school right now. You're learning because you love to learn, but you're learning also because you want to find some sort of a skill and apprehend some sort of an ability to make a contribution to the bigger world. Learning by critical inquiry, critical debate, subjecting one's view to testing, and environmental feedback have stood the test of time. This goes back to Socrates and Aristotle and the ancients who used to use the Socratic theory to ask people questions, essentially. And this is the kind of the basis for where I started to understand online learning, believe it or not. So why build a high-performance learning organization? I think it lies in this, because our minds are fast, efficient seekers. They are processors of validating and confirming information. That's really what we do. We are great at confirming what we already know. We tend to be confirmation-based thinkers. And today that's more true than ever. We really have as Kahneman told us, as Daniel Kahneman told us, it's hard to work in that second thinking phase. It takes a lot of work, it takes energy. So what I'm trying to do is, through Ment.io, through a dialogue approach, we're trying to engage people in thinking without they even realizing that they're thinking. And that's kind of a challenge. How do we build a high-performance learning organization? We take our cognitive and emotional processing to a higher level. Not just about rote learning. It's not just about trying to say, oh, I can recall that after 2 weeks and I can test it. When weighing alternatives, trying to make a hard decision, or something goes wrong and we are trying to figure out why, we think about root cause analysis. We think about critical thinking. And we have to have give and take, and we have to challenge one another. We have to remove the fear of being challenged or being wrong. So that's what I attempt to do in my 15 years of teaching online. I think I've got some things that are working in the right direction. We call it dialogue intensive learning. And essentially it's this, it's learning online, and that's what we're talking about today. And there's both synchronous and there's asynchronous. Synchronous is Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting. We're on Zoom right now, we're live, we're in each other's face. You know, it's a good way to learn. It's educational video conferences, interactive webinars, chat-based online discussions. Then on the other side of the equation, and this is all part of online learning, is the asynchronous part, which is a mystery for many of us. So it's Canvas, Moodle, Blackboard, Adobe Captivate, YouTube, Coursera, and of course Ment.io. And it's also the whole idea of chat rooms, threaded discussions, video lectures, MOOC-style delivery, one-on-one. So with that, we kind of say, let's just focus on the asynchronous for a second here. I'll give you some background as to where I got into dialogue intensive learning. Essentially, discussion begins with a question. I pose a question. It's been based on what we have been reading, what we've been seeing in lectures. I do video lectures and that sort of thing. What we've been doing to try to understand the information, the concepts, the ideas that we are studying. The discussion begins with a question. I then have students respond with a quote unquote take, supported by a life experience. So tell me your position on this and support it with something you've experienced in your life, or pull a citation from the course learning materials. And that becomes something which I know now, if they are doing that, and I require them to do that, I know now that they are engaging the material. It's amazing how many times I have assigned reading, and I am pretty sure none of it got read. And I know some of it got read, but not every word and never have. So what I'm trying to do is boil this stuff down to the learning objectives that we're trying to get across in the course and assess those. Are students able to talk about those things? Are they able to articulate? Are they able to pull from the material something that's apropos and fits? Then students make posts 2 times a day, 3 days a week, anytime in a 24-hour window. I have a lot of graduate students, they have jobs, it's very difficult. Sometimes they get on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I've had students get on my classes from Afghanistan in a foxhole. I'm not kidding you. You have too, probably, because that's the way we're learning these days. That's the way things are happening. Students are provided a posting rubric, and it's basically this: succinct, be succinct, 100 words. Support, 1/2 with an experience or 1/2 with a site. Have a take, support it with something you've done or something you've read. And then finally, spelling and grammar are perfect. They have to be perfect. Why? It's discipline. We're asking students to not just make this a sloppy chat room with a bunch of, little IMIOs and stuff, but real words, real academic words that we're trying to understand. So what it looks like then is we have, I actually put this in my syllabus, and it outlines a typical dialogue that would go on. Now, I've done this for a long time before I ever came in contact with Ment.io. And it's worked well, but I do this on an LMS, and I've done it on Blackboard, and I'm now doing it on Canvas. Our university uses Canvas. It works, but it's clunky, and it's kind of hard to, threaded discussions, they just don't have them. Whereas Ment.io does 2 things. They actually have a very nice, smooth relationship to topic, to individuals. They actually also have this algorithm piece that's magnificent because it gives students guidance. What they really need to participate is they need to know whether or not they're doing well. And you'll see some student comments and how well that works. So when we think about dialogue intensive learning, we look at this, the LMS is kind of the centerpiece for me. And from that, and it happens to be Canvas. And we work, and I use Canvas very effectively in terms of issuing assignments and also hosting the assessment coaching component of Ment.io. So when they get done at the end of the week, and on Saturday, they're going to post their aha. Remember, we talked about learning in this environment is about aha. It's about saying, oh, I get it. I didn't quite get, okay, now I do. So this particular student says the consensus was initially that all employees buying into a company values is necessary. Then I started seeing a shift. So what she is demonstrating to me is what she was going through as she was learning about the way that buy-in occurs, the way things occur in companies. I give her coaching. Very simple. At the end of the week, she gets her assessment of points based on the rubric that we talked about. If she fulfills the basics, that's the quantitative. And if she fills the understanding that I have read something that really does make sense, then I'll give her the full allotment of points. If not, I'll coach her on the where she kind of missed, where the sweet spot. Or I'll give her an answer like this. So that's always there on any LMS. The magic is Mint.io changes that whole discussion component. It changes it substantially so that we actually have a means by which we can organize this question. Here's my question. Can you think of a brand you use that establishes a whole new category, subcategory of product? You may use cited examples in course materials. Now, folks, you will have to play with this to figure out what questions work for you and what subjects. And they gave me a lot of guidance and I used it, and some things worked really well. I can find out whether they do or not. For example, this particular had all 26 people responding. And I did not use any clarifications. I'll talk about that in a second. I need to use more clarifications. But here's what happens. We get this wonderful, discussion log, if you will, and people are actually exchanging their thoughts, and they're agreeing, sometimes disagreeing. They're putting a fine point on it. And I have the option, by using that clarification, by reaching out to an individual when they might be varying off or straying off, and say, hey, have you thought about this? Maybe you could bring it back in. Because that all dialogue can just go off and they can talk about all kinds of wonderful things and trips they took and all that. And that doesn't really matter. But with Mint.io, they also had that grading component. And the grading component is very important. So they get two assessments. They get a personal assessment, and then with each Mint.io discussion, I give them a discussion recap by rolling through all the comments and say, what did they say? So they now can very succinctly read in 100 words or less what went on in that discussion. Okay, so coaching at the grade issuance is like this, and this is, I'll spend a little more time. I think we're a little bit back on time, so I'm going to be careful and not run over. I've got about 3 or 4 minutes. So you know, basically what you can see here is that I asked them to summarize what they did on Mint.io, and that's my point at which I can give them their formal grade. If they don't get a formal grade, they don't take this seriously, you know that. But also, it gives me the opportunity to get their attention to decide whether or not they're really getting this or not. I can tell you right now that if you give somebody a physics exam, they could probably give you an answer one way or the other. And all my colleagues just fret and worry about cheating on exams. You can't cheat on this. I will sometimes call people up that are in my online classes and say, what were you thinking? Because what I want to understand is, was that their dog doing the homework, or their brother, or was it them? And by talking to them for 10 minutes, you get that answer. But also what happens is they now feel the engagement. These comments and my personal reaching out to them and saying, hey, I don't think you know, those kind of things that you want to do with students, say, how you do? I can do this so much easier because I can spot it. I can identify it. And if you want to talk about engagement, that's where engagement online platform way outdoes in classroom engagement. What I have found in classroom is that if you have 25 students, 4 or 5 maybe, they're always got the hand up, they're always ready to answer, they can't wait, they don't even know what the question is, they're fighting their hand doing it. But the trouble is, I want to hear from the people that don't. The people that don't talk isn't because they don't have something to say, it's because they're a little fearful, they're a little shy. They have this fear, but it's not here. Now, when I do a hybrid class, which was talked about here, I do a hybrid class where I use this also. I'll take these comments and I'll take them back into the class and post it on the board and say, this is what one of the comments was, anonymously. The person that sees that now is validated. They can see their comment. They say, oh, that's me, yeah. They can either acknowledge it or not acknowledge it, and they can do that based on whether or not the class thought what they said was good or bad. Most of the time, it's really good. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get those people to come out of the woodwork, the ones that actually may contribute to the creation of a bigger or different problem, the one that they can spot that no one else can spot. So student comments are some, here's a couple, I'll give you a couple real quickly. I really like the scoring and feel as the scores are invaluable to learning, to the learning process. It gives me a barometer as to measure the quality of my responses to others in the class. And they get these various scores, and they're very nicely done because you know, you couldn't sit down and do that by yourself, but through the algorithm, it works really well. Here's another comment. It's not the quantity of your answers, but the quality. That's one thing Mint.io seems to be able to coax students to do, because if they find that they're just repeating what others said, they don't get any score. There's nothing happening. And the algorithm picks it out. But if they're actually contributing something new, the score goes up. And I have some students that just can't seem to score. One of the reasons is they come late. And that's their own worry. That's, they aren't in it. But also because they are not digging deep enough into the material to find something new. Now, this really is actionable for me to be able to coach them and say, this is what you ought to be doing. So the scores provide feedback and a kind of coach on how to make you a better poster. So these are various coaching grade issuance and so forth, and that's the way that works. The whole concept here is that I think this is repetitive for some reason here. I don't know why that is, but it shouldn't be. Yeah, this is just going back, and we're done. Okay, that must be it. I thought there was something else here. Beg your pardon. We don't have enough bugs in our presentation yet today. So essentially, what I'm getting at with you folks is I don't think that you have to worry about the technology. Ment is pretty easy to figure out. I think what you have to do is just practice what you're really good at, and that is take your content and find a way to cause your students to engage with it. And the best way to do that is the way Socrates taught us. Ask a question. The way we've learned over years. How do we engage in real dialogue? Not this civil, discourse that is turned into muck and mire that we see on TV and radio and the social media. But I mean real, live, genuine, honest, and really respectful kinds of gnawing away at difficult and untractable problems. So I think that's about 20 minutes. I don't know. Are you okay with that, Annette? You want me to undo this now, I suppose? Okay. There we go. I think I just found that piece that was missing. Here's the wrap up. I don't know why they didn't come up before, but it didn't. So learning to learn is what we're doing here. People can continually expand. They can expand their capacity to create results that they truly desire. They can also learn and expand where new and expansive platforms of thinking are nurtured through dialogue. And matter of fact, I don't know how many times I've talked to people, and they were talking on the phone because they're walking. And they're kinesthetic learners. They want to be moving. That's the way their brain engaged. I learn a lot of times when I'm the quote sage on the stage, and stuff's running through my head because I'm tapping into it as I speak, because I learn by speaking. Anyway, so we also learn collective aspiration is set free, where we start to understand we do have things common that we can do and we can create better, which works really well also in a business environment, and where people are continually learning how to learn together. So I will put this back over on you. Stop sharing, and there we are. Okay. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I cannot hear you. Unmute? Can you unmute? You're muted.
Now can you hear me? Perfect.
Yes,
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. This, as expected, was very, very insightful and very interesting. I think that the most important lessons that I've been learning from you is the fact that somehow you manage, and you've given some insights into that today, to empower the students and to reduce their fear of trying to learn and of making an effort and putting themselves out there, which is something that all students worry about when they enter the classroom. And I think that empowerment, that guidance, the other thing that strikes me very hard is the fact that, in a very good way, is the fact that you are not worried from guiding them and coaching them to the right way that you see fit to how they should be behaving in the classroom. And that is truly inspiring. I'd like to tap into some of the things that you mentioned and I'll share my screen now and just show a few elements of the platform that speaks to what you were just referring to. I think the first thing is to say that, yes, I think the empowerment aspect of enabling us to guide the students is extremely important. And Tim had mentioned the clarifications that you can add to any question, but there's also an announcement button that you can be using that is sent directly, sends a notification to all the students on their email. So when I find that my students, and I'm sure others as well, when I find that my students are not using citations enough or are not using evidence enough, then I write here, great discussion so far, please provide more evidence. Or alternatively, please provide evidence to the contrary or arguments to disagree, because that's also a challenge, speaking to the fact that they are, at least at first, hesitant to put themselves out there and especially disagree. And the way that the discussion works on Menti.io is the fact that you can read any answer, the students can read any answer, and when they're adding their reply, they need to decide whether they agree or disagree. They can, of course, do all the other push different buttons, which to the students feels a lot like social media, which is fun for them and kind of easy to use. And they can upvote and downvote and mark as insightful, but it's the agree disagree that creates this Socratic discussion that Tim was speaking about, and users of Menti.io feel. So that is one element that I wanted to highlight, and also point out to the fact that we can, as the instructors, see the participants and their contributions to the different, to the discussion, to this particular discussion. So I can overview the discussion without having to respond directly to each and every student. I can see how they're doing. I can also see, filtered by user, their activity log, which answers have they contributed and when, right? And I can also view only the highlights of the discussion. So I have all these different tools that kind of, so to speak, empower me or the instructors to overview the discussion. But I think the most important element is the fact that the students themselves can see how they're doing. So they could see everything that we just discussed and I showed you, but they can also see how they're doing in terms of number of discussions they took part in, users they collaborated with, answers that they have seen and that others have seen by them. There's very cool analytics on different areas. I won't go into many details, but I will say something about this. This is where the students, this and at the top of this page is where the students see how they're doing in different elements that make a good discussion. And they are basically, and we are talking about 3 pillars: engagement, collaboration with each other, right, to make new knowledge, and quality or thoroughness of arguments. And when they're looking at their cognitive map, they can see how they're doing in terms of how thorough their answers are, how believable they are, and how credible by other users. They can see their activity levels, their collaboration. There's this thing where it took me a while to understand that a student can comment in a very, very brilliant manner, but if they hadn't read, if he or she had not read what others are writing, the discussion will be far less richer than it can be. So collaboration is extremely important to the Menti.io discussions. It differentiates, I think that's one of the main differentiators between Menti.io and other discussion platforms. And I think it is crucial to create new knowledge and to enable the users to grow into the learners that we would like them to be, how clear they are, how balanced they are, how much they agree versus disagree. All these types of information enable the students to grow and to improve how they are contributing on discussions. And all these elements are basically flowing into the participation assessment that are only visible to the instructors. And this is what we're seeing here. I can't see each individual student's My Analytics, right? It's their page. I don't see that page. What I do see is the aggregated performance of each student on Menti.io, and I can see how they're doing in terms of actions on the platform, answers by others that they have viewed, again, extremely important for their collaboration, how much they actually collaborated with others, right? Engaged in other people's comments and answers, percentage of discussions that they took part in. That's also important because there are students that need these participation components in order to excel. And that leads me to the last component of the assessment, which is the quality score. How thorough are their answers? And not all students can be excellent in their contributions. They can be interesting, they can bring to the table very interesting remarks, but we should enable, and these are the components that you're seeing here, they should be able to excel on the discussions even without being the best in terms of thoroughness of arguments. That's why we have engagement, which is, the level of discussions and actions, collaboration, and the quality score. And I think these are the most important elements that I wanted to highlight. I think that this brings, and then we can open, and I think it's good timing to open the floor for questions. I think that the idea here, again, is, and this is what Menti.io is doing, this is how I came to join the company because I liked the platform so much when I was using it with my students. On the one hand, I can be hands-on on everything that is going on the discussion, using highlights, reading every comment, and also creating a conversation with my students. On the other hand, they have the ability to look at their own analytics and improve their performance on the discussions. And if their quality of arguments are not good enough, they should go to look for citations and look for good arguments and step up their game. And the ability for the students to do this for themselves is, I think, highly valuable. And I think it speaks directly to the themes that Tim was opening up for us. So I think in terms of this short kind of supplement to what Tim was referring to, I think I'll open the floor to Q&A. I'm not sure how to do that practically. Unmute, okay. I'll unmute Zvika. I'll stop sharing my screen. That would be a good way to start. And, okay, sorry, just a second. How do I unmute Zvika? I'm not sure, Tim, how you did this for me. I'll try. Maybe, okay, I'll give it a go. Sorry, I can't. Nope. Sorry, bear with us, folks. Again, apologies for these technical difficulties. Tim, can you unmute Zvika?
Yes, I went up to his name and I just highlighted his name, but I don't think I can do that now.
I think because you're the host, you can unmute him.
Okay, that's what I'll do.
Thank you.
I just got onto him. I'm looking for the unmuting and I don't see an unmuting on him. Oh, here it is. Ask to unmute. There it is. That's what I found before.
Oh,
Hi,
perfect.
everyone.
Okay, you got it? Yeah. You on?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
on. Can you hear me well?
Great.
All right, so thanks everyone. I'm here just helping with slight moderation. I see questions coming via the Q&A, which is good, and I am happy that Tim and Anat will be here to address it. Just 2 comments before we start with the questions to allow as much time as possible for the question. So 2 minor comments. I see people here asking about Menti.io, what the software does, how exactly Tim uses it in class. Maybe I'll start by telling you that we want to open Menti.io for you as a team to be able to even be in touch after this session and to collaborate and to continue this discussion going. So what I'll do now, if you don't mind, I'm going to send you now a link. You can follow that link in the chat. That link leads you, and you'll be able to join our dedicated team for you, all the participants in the webinar, and you can just experience the platform at first hand, and I hope you'll find the benefit there, and we will be there, of course, to spend the time with you. Second item, just so you are aware, we've opened a dedicated email address. The email address is webinars@ment.io. It's there for you to also reach out to us with any question following this session. We also have some interesting promotion codes for you to be able to use the platform. Since the semester has started, we're basically offering the platform for everyone here for the remainder of the semester at the price of 1 month. But again, feel free to just reach out to us and we'll talk the details. But without further ado, I see some questions that I want to quickly start by addressing. So here goes. There's a question coming from Patrick about ways to overcome student fear and get them to initiate interaction. So if you don't mind, team, I'll take that to you because I'm sure that you expect that in class.
Yeah, that, you know, this may sound oversimplified, but it is the most effective way. If you set expectations from the get-go on the syllabus, and I've even gone to the trouble of preparing a little tutorial, if you will, like I showed a piece of it on the presentation, which said, hey, you have a choice. If you're gonna want your grade, you're gonna have to take part. Now, the part that most people have a trouble with is that they don't want to be embarrassed by doing that. So what I do is I give them as much coaching and guidance as to how to create a good post. This is what it looks like. And I watch students in the first several to see how they're doing. And if they're really missing it, the biggest problem I have is they go way over 100 words and they just keep on dragging on. And the trouble with that is, and I just say it very simply, very correct. Great post, lots of stuff. One take is all we want. And it has to be succinct, 100 words or less, because we want to know what you thought about in its very baked down mode. And we don't want to clutter everybody's mind with all kinds of words. So more of that apprehension lies in the way in which they create a post. And as soon as they get that figured out, that they have to think about it, and I tell them, hey, compose it on Word, read it, and then post it if you have to. Because what that does is it gives you that private time to think through it. When you're thinking, that's when you're actually doing yourself a benefit, whether you ever get to post to the paper or not, right? So part of the thing is, how do we get them to just engage? And that's a great question because they're afraid. So I just say, you don't have a choice and you're not alone. Now, that's hard when you have a lot of students. I'm fortunate, I've put all my classes on this. It's 53 students, I think, in 3 different classes. And I can do it. I can get it done.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think this also resonates with Maria's question about once a student sees their own performance or analytics, can they close the gap? So I think you mentioned your interaction with the students off class, basically providing them some mentorship and explaining them what are the best practices for good discussion. So I hope that answers that. Question coming from Mitch Leventhal about the ability to queue up discussion topics for future release or dates. This is actually a product question and we're hearing that all the time. One of the features that are coming is the ability to have questions in draft mode and basically push them towards a specific event like a course or even the coming semester when you want to prepare and submit questions in advance. So as the product team, we are working closely on this feedback, and this is one of the coming features that we are very excited about. I want to ask a question provided by a user named UK about being a teacher with 160 students. One of the concerns is that the software may be overwhelming, and I think the question is about efficiency. Right? How do we make sure that the software saves you time and not creates an overworked instructor in class that have more tasks?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. My daughter is an elementary school teacher, and when she went online, she was a nervous wreck, And she's very cool and calm and confident, and she's a great teacher. I've watched her teach, and first of all, the amount of energy that most elementary and middle school teachers have is extraordinary. You're on from start to finish, and I'm there for, you know, nothing. So I admire you, but you're asking the right question, because 160 students is a lot. Here's what I'll tell you. She was overwhelmed. We're all overwhelmed the first time we get into the environment. But as you start to work it, for example, Mitch's question about, are you going to be able to queue these up? That becomes a time saver. The second and third and fourth time that you run this course, you're done. A good part of your prep work is set. The questions are loaded, you're ready to go, and you don't have to go and do all that over again, because UK, I empathize with you, because until I kind of figured out, gee, this is all repetitive, actually. From my perspective, delivering course material, challenging the questions, you find some things change once in a while. But essentially, that's a great question. 160 students is a lot. The second thing I'll recommend is break that down. Get it into smaller chunks, smaller groups. And I think that's what the MENT people would say also, because 160 is almost like, you know, it's like trying to, it's like trying to teach something on a subway car. You know, it's just too many.
Thank you very much, team. Question coming from our friend Minette at Syracuse. She sees new analytics being added, like the level of contrarianism coming from different students. And this is an example of how MENT is an evolving product, and my analytics features are added as we go. So you used to see some participation around quality or level of collaboration. Now we're measuring even students' contrarianism in order to give as many parameters as possible to the instructor when coming to finalize the assessment. So thank you, Minette, for that comment, and we are adding those capabilities as we go. Patrick is asking about posting multimedia such as videos and audios. So I will just say about it that MENT supports all kinds of attachments. Some use it for posting links that refer you to other places where files are stored, but basically we support all standard attachments of any kind, including links to videos, etc. Another question that I think you may be interested in, I saw it before, I'm sorry, but I'm scrolling back up. Yeah, so a question coming from Sean for you, team. Basically, what kind of percentage from the course final grade you assign based on the type of work that was done in MENT?
35%. 30
Right.
to 35%. I give quizzes, and they are, even though, you know, they're very important, they're a smaller percentage, 10 to 15, and then you know, maybe up to 20 with the final, and you know, it depends on the course. Sometimes quizzes are a little different. The discussion part, or MENT, what I would typically have called threaded discussion, is 35% based on the course. Now, sometimes the courses, I teach a course in organizational performance, which is essentially about self-development and self-understanding, and how do I become a better team member so that I can actually improve the individual performance. That gets to be a little bit more about writing. You know, they're actually getting inside and writing things just to me, because those are kind of personal documents. So we might you know, dip down a little bit, but so it's 30 to 35% in most cases.
Yeah, and the reason we delegated this question to Tim basically is because it's a judgment call by the professor.
That's right.
Equipping you with tools, but the level of weights you choose to assess each component, including the MENT score, is completely up to you. So the software will not determine the student score. It will provide insights and recommendation that you can take on.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
When you're trying to teach students how to become vulnerable and how to be a little risky, I've employed something entirely different, and many of you will disagree with it. Say, well, I do 1,000-point scale on all classes, and then I divvy out quarterly. And if you have a 7-week graduate course, for example, or 11-week, or whatever it happens to be, then they get an equal amount in a given area. So if they poorly perform in the first several weeks, and it's because they just don't want to open up, I will often write them a note and say, you didn't do well. Show me how you can improve that, I'll go back at the end of the course and restore the lost points. Now, intuitively, that's wrong because we want to quantify and we want to make sure they only knew it if did they study or not. But what we're talking about here is trying to coax people out of their fear and coax people out of away from, and so you don't want to penalize them. I dug a hole I'll never get out of. I can never get those points back. Students are absolutely riveted on the grade. I have to spend most of the time saying, stop worrying about the grade. They are just, because we taught them to be.
Thank you for that. I see a question from Lisa Gallagher that I want us to expand on because it's really interesting. Lisa talks about the class sizes, and obviously it's not one size fits all, right? You mentioned the class of 160 and the class of 40 that will not necessarily behave the same. Can you give from your experience on how you would approach it differently and whether there's a benefit at some size of class maybe to break the discussion rooms into few teams as opposed to maintaining it in one place? What's your recommendation here, Tim?
At our college, 25 students in a class is max. We never put more than that in a class. Now, that's in online also, and it took administration a while to understand you just can't load people up in a online course because, quite frankly, once you start to teach in online, you realize there's an enormous amount of work, equally as much, if not more, than exists when you're the sage on the stage. If you're the sage on the stage and you're tenured and you're doing your 2 classes and you're doing your research, you can pop in and get the GAs to clean up behind you and you're on your way. But what I've never approached it that way because I'm not a tenure track and I'm not tenured. I don't want to be, and it's not my choice. I respect it greatly. But my point is, how much more time do I spend with them? To get back to your question, so they try to help us by limiting the number of students in the class. If I had 160, I think the best thing that you could possibly do, and I think this is necessary, and I think schools, the more they realize they're going to be online, and they will be, the more they're going to have to realize we're going to have to add some TA resources to this. Because if you had a TA helping you do some of the administrative work, that's where my daughter's getting bogged down right now. She's in a district where they're teaching both online and in class. And it's duplicating the work. And she comes home, she's just worn out. And she's still working at home. So I veered off the path a little bit there, but I'm trying to read inside that question. I think that's what people are asking. How do I use a tool like this to reduce my work? And I think one of the things is sometimes you might have to go back in administration and say, I need a little help.
Right. Just so everyone knows, we reposted the link to the environment we have made accessible to all of you over the chat, a shorter link that you can click. I hope that connects you into the environment more easily. If you have any last question, it would be now a good time to write them over the chat. We're obviously happy to continue this discussion and remind you that we're available to you in the webinars at Ment.io email for any type of question. And if, of course, you want to try out Ment this semester, we also have some interesting promotions for you. Otherwise, Anat and Tim, any final remarks from you, except for thanking Tim greatly for this session. I really enjoyed and learned from that.
No, I hope it's as good as you say. I don't know sometimes because I'll be very frank with you. I'm learning along with all of you. Doing this caused me to have to put some thoughts together as you do this. So it helped me kind of advance and get to the task of kind of assessing what I'm doing here. This is a work in progress. It always is. And sometimes we hit it sweetly and sometimes we miss a little bit. But you can't, just like you're causing students to try, that the biggest problem we have in the 21st century is failure to fail. Is failure to try. If we don't want to fail, if we are fearful of failing, we will never make any advancement against the untractable problems that we have. So I just in that thought, what I want to offer is set your own fears aside. Don't worry about failing, and keep attention to it and guide it home. Figure it out. If you've made it this long in your career, you're teaching, you're a good teacher. So you know how to get this, and all you've done for me is help me kind of think about some things. So I appreciate it as much as you can imagine.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. Just, if you can unmute Anat for a second so she can maybe say a few last words. Other than that, again, it's been an honor, and I think it's been a very interesting learning experience to hear how you approach class and how you approach asynchronous learning with Ment.io. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I am, first of all, I would like to thank you, Tim, for the privilege to listening to these guidelines and suggestions on how to become better instructors. To me, it was, for me, it was an absolute honor to take part in this, and I want to wholeheartedly thank you for taking the time and bearing through the technical difficulties and still be able to bestow that wisdom upon us. And I want to thank the participants as well for being patient and moving with us, and for your insightful questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part. And thank you again, Tim, for all this wonderful, insightful wisdom. There's no other word for that.
I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. I appreciate just the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. And we hope to be in touch and make technology work for all of us, really.
Yes.
So we can do our job a little easier.
That's right. Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.